Welcome back. The General Services Administration says it'll implement all the recommendations its Office of Inspector General made about problems the IG found with login.gov. The IG found GSA claimed login.gov met NIST digital identity guidelines when it really didn't. Sonny Hashmi is Commissioner of the Federal Acquisition Service at the General Services Administration. Sonny, it's great to see you. Thanks for coming on. What specifically are you taking action-wise to meet the challenge that Congress gave you about login.gov?
Yeah, thanks, Francis. It's great to be here, too. So let's go back to first principles. The entire thesis and the reason for login's existence is that Americans need a consistent single account to work with their government agencies, whether they're applying for benefits or they're interacting in a different with an agency. This account needs to be secure. It needs to protect privacy, and it needs to reduce fraud. And more importantly than everything else, it needs to work for all Americans. That is the entire thesis and the reason why we are proud to work on this program. Login's value proposition continues to be very clear to agencies. Just the last month, we announced that we've surpassed 70 million user accounts in Login, and the utility and the adoption keeps going up. We have great plans forthcoming. In fact, the Login team recently, about a month ago, released a roadmap for the program that anybody can go online and take a look at for themselves. That roadmap covers not only the immediate response to the commitments that we made to Congress, but also creates a very bold agenda for the next many years on how this program is going to grow. That includes new capabilities that are already being deployed. As an example, we recently deployed an integration with the United States Postal Service that allows all Americans, no matter where they are, to go to their local post office and get in-person identity proofing. Similarly, we just expanded the hours and languages that people can engage with the program with. Now we can provide customer service 24/7, no matter where you are. These are all examples of how we are recommitted to continue to not only earn the trust, but also increase value we provide to our agency partners.
One of the commitments that you made to Congress was creating a login.gov steering committee. What do those folks do, and what are the deliverables for that steering committee, Sonny?
Of course. So, listen, everything we do ultimately needs to serve the needs of our customers. The steering committee has already been meeting for over a year. In fact, that committee has executives from all branches of government and, more specifically, at all levels of government. We have many agency partners who provide us with feedback on how the service is working for them. And they also help us guide and navigate the emerging threat landscape that we're operating in. So we continue to get that feedback in the hands of the people who are building this capability, and we'll continue to do so.
We'll put a link to that roadmap at fedgovtoday.com in the show notes for this episode of the show. What does that roadmap look like briefly? Is there a destination at the end of that map, or are there just landmarks along the way that you and your team want to hit?
Yeah, I don't believe in destinations. I think the world around us is changing constantly. The expectations for the capabilities we're building will continue to change, but we do have a good line of sight over the next 18 months. We want to certainly increase the compliance and posture of the program. We want to make sure that we work on new use cases with agencies such as the Department of Labor. We were Gundeep was on the show just recently, to make sure that Americans who frankly need access to government services at all levels of government, whether it's state, local, or federal government, can continue to use a common service and a common account. And then we continue to want to make sure that we lean into making sure that the service works for everybody. Remember, not all Americans have access to a bank account, an address, and we have to serve all of these Americans. So we want to continue to build capabilities that allow anybody to work with the government in a digital sense, no matter what their capability and access may be.
Last time we were together, you were on the podcast, and we talked about your North Stars, and one of those is you want to make it dead easy to do business with the Federal Acquisition Service. What does that look like in the summer of 2023, Sonny?
So for those of you who may not know, one of the things that I care deeply about is to make sure that I create a vision for the organization that anybody can relate to. At the Federal Acquisition Service, our mission is very simple, but it's deeply important. Number one, we want to create products and services that matter and add value to the customer's mission. Two, we want to create a marketplace that's thriving, resilient, and equitable, and creates pathways for new entrants into doing business with the government. And third, as you mentioned, is to continue to make it easier to do business with the government. We have done a lot in this space just in the last couple of years alone. As an example, one of the things that we care about deeply is to actually listen to the user stories. On the other side of every transaction and every interaction that we have, it's a company, it's a new business, it's a small business, it's a user. We want to make sure that we listen to them directly. And every product that we build is based on that feedback. I'll give you 2 examples. We recently, about 6 months ago, released a new capability called buy.gsa.gov. If you're a buyer who wants to buy a product or service for the federal government, that is your one-stop shop to go and get the entire process completed from end to end. That is based 100% on user feedback. We sat down with users and understood how they do their work and build capabilities that actually matter to them. Similarly, we're about to release and recently announced release of a new platform that is going to completely change how vendors get on GSA schedules. As you know, that's been a fairly complicated process for a long time that involves technology that was designed in the 1990s. We're going to completely change that. In fact, I'm excited to share that just in this coming year, we're going to be retiring 2 systems called SIP and Core. Both of them are 20 years old with a modern online-based capability that allow real-time ability to modify and change your contracts. We recently announced a capability that allows you to do certain contract modifications in real time without any human intervention for certain types of changes. That is all based on user feedback that we constantly get. And so those are just some examples on how we're constantly focused on reducing the barrier to entry, making it easier, allowing people to actually work from wherever they are, and to the extent possible, using automation and technology to be able to reduce not just the burden on our user base, but also our internal contracting officer base.
What I think I hear there too is that you consider your user base the vendors that sell into the government through GSA, as well as your government customers that buy from GSA.
Absolutely.
Through GSA. Is
Everything
that right?
we do has 3 stakeholder groups. We have the supplier base, tens of thousands of companies, small and large, who do business with us every day. We have our customers, ultimately, who are buying these products and services to achieve a mission outcome. And then we have our internal workforce. Their needs need to be also kept in mind as we develop these modernization strategies.
Yeah, GSA was kind of the pioneer of the internal customer experience. Martha Doris and others that were in the organization. How do you consider that when you're going through things like replacing SIP and other things like that? What does that look like from an internal perspective?
It's a great question, and the same rules apply. You need to get the users who are going to log in and do a thing in the decision cycle, in the design process. Without those people on the table, and these folks are not always folks that traditionally people talk to when they're thinking about a modernization project. We put the user at the center of every modernization we do. So as an example, some of the capabilities I mentioned, we had groups created where internal contracting officers, program managers came together and directly provided feedback on how they work and what's getting in their way. And that feedback then drives how we build the capabilities we build. You
mentioned automation. I imagine automation is going to be a big component of the kind of the upgrades, the transformations that you're doing at GSA.
Absolutely. There's 2 main components. I call them foundational pillars that drive all the modernization we're doing. One of them is automation, and the other is data. Federal acquisition is a data problem. In fact, in some of the interviews I've done in the past, I've called this a 10-year challenge. If we can get the data right, we can support cybersecurity expectations, we can create new opportunities for small business, we can identify the right products and services to buy to drive sustainability. All these initiatives that we're trying to drive, we can do that, but we need to have deep visibility into what's being bought, what's available, and what the marketplace looks like.
Mm-hmm. What happens next in some of these areas that we've talked about? What happens next with login? What happens next with the changes that you're making in SIP and these other things? Yeah,
there's a lot of transformation we're driving across the Federal Acquisition Service. You're going to be hearing a lot more as some of these foundational things are now in place. The one thing that I will share is that these things are going to continue to be released in certain cadences. As an example, we recently released a procurement equity tool that allows federal agencies to identify small businesses that are specialized down to the congressional district on where they want the work to be done. That has never existed before, and that required us to bring data from multiple sources together to put it in the hands of decision makers who are identifying a particular contractor to do a job. Similarly, that data can be used by vendors to identify their competitive landscape to see how they can be more effective and more successful. That's just one example of how data is already powering a lot of the things that we're doing. So go check that out. But if you want to learn more, follow our efforts on interact.gsa.gov, or just go to gsa.gov. We regularly post blogs there, and you'll know more about all the different things that are happening and coming down the pike.
Sonny Hashmi, it's great to see you. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Francis.
You can find a link to all of those resources that Sonny talked about at fedgovtoday.com. FedGov Today with Francis Rose is back in a moment.